The unforgivable insult. The crystal corridors of Nexus Station hummed with the voices of 1,000 species. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the Grand Hall, her modest human delegation trailing behind her like shadows against the towering forms of the Galactic Trade Council members. The humans had been invited to this summit as a courtesy, nothing more. They were the newest species to achieve faster-than-light travel, barely a century old in galactic terms. Sarah adjusted her simple blue uniform, feeling underdressed among the elaborate ceremonial garments of the other delegates. The Vorthok wore their living metal suits that shifted colors with their emotions. The crystalline Nexori chimed softly as they moved, their bodies catching the station's artificial light and throwing rainbows across the walls. Even the insectoid Threx had adorned themselves with precious metals and gems that clicked as they walked. The humans looked plain by comparison. Practical, boring. "Remember," Sarah whispered to her aide, Dr. Marcus Webb, "we're here to observe and learn. This is about building relationships for the future." Marcus nodded, his weathered face serious behind wire-rimmed glasses. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, he had spent years preparing for this moment. The cultural briefings suggest we should avoid direct eye contact with the Zephyrians. It's considered aggressive. Sarah made a mental note as they approached the main assembly chamber. The room was vast, with floating platforms arranged in a complex three-dimensional pattern that accommodated the different gravitational and atmospheric needs of each species. The human platform was positioned near the bottom, barely above the waste disposal systems. Another subtle insult, but Sarah let it slide. The session began with the traditional greeting ceremonies. Each species performed their ancient rituals, some lasting hours. The ethereal singers filled the chamber with harmonies that made reality shimmer. The fire dancers of Pierrot's created intricate patterns of controlled flame. When it came time for the humans to present their greeting, Sarah simply stood and bowed respectfully. A ripple of what sounded like laughter echoed through the chamber. High Chancellor Vextera of the Zephyrian Empire rose from her platform, her 12-foot-tall form radiating authority. Her species had ruled a quarter of the known galaxy for over 10,000 years. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of millennia. "How... quaint," she said, her words translated perfectly by the universal communication system. "The humans offer us a simple bow. How refreshingly primitive." More laughter. Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks, but maintained her composure. "Tell me, little human," Vexthera continued, her forearms gesturing gracefully, "do your people have no concept of proper respect, no understanding of ceremony? Or are you simply too limited by your brief existence to comprehend the gravity of this gathering?" The chamber fell silent. Sarah felt every eye upon her, studying her reaction. This was a test, she realized, a hazing ritual for the newest species. "Your Excellency," Sarah began carefully, "humans believe that respect is shown through actions, not elaborate displays. We prefer substance over ceremony." The Chancellor's laugh was like breaking glass. "Actions? What actions could a species that has existed for merely a few 100,000 years possibly take that would impress civilizations spanning millions of years? You barely understand fire, let alone the complexities of interstellar governance." Sarah's jaw tightened. Behind her, she heard Dr. Webb's sharp intake of breath. The human delegation stood frozen, watching their ambassador weather the storm of cosmic condescension. "Perhaps," Vextera continued, warming to her audience, "we should assign the humans a role more suited to their capabilities. Waste management. Perhaps," Or maybe they could serve as entertainment. I understand they have amusing emotional displays when frustrated. The laughter was louder now. Species that had never spoken to each other found common ground in mocking humanity. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest, a feeling that would haunt her for decades to come. We appreciate the councils. Humor, Sarah said quietly. But perhaps it would be more productive to discuss trade agreements and mutual cooperation. Cooperation. The Chancellor's eyes glittered with amusement. What could humanity possibly offer that we would want? Your technology is pathetic. Your art is simplistic. Your philosophy is childish. You are insects pretending to be eagles. And the galaxy finds it, endearing. The word endearing hit Sarah like a physical blow. Not just an insult, but dismissal. Humanity wasn't even worth taking seriously enough to hate. Tell me, Vexthera said, leaning forward on her platform. Do humans even understand the concept of patience? Your lifespans are so brief. Your civilizations so fragile. Do you know what it means to plan beyond a single generation? To think in terms of millennia rather than decades? Sarah's hands trembled slightly. She had spent years preparing for this moment, dreaming of humanity taking its place among the stars. Instead, they were being treated like amusing pets. We understand patience, Your Excellency, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. Do you, the Chancellor? Laughed again. Then perhaps you'll be patient enough to wait until you're truly ready to join galactic civilization. A few more 1,000 years should suffice. Until then, perhaps it's best if humanity ... stays home. The session continued, but Sarah barely heard it. The human delegation was ignored for the rest of the summit, their proposals dismissed without discussion, their presence barely acknowledged. When they finally departed Nexus Station, the silence in their shuttle was deafening. Ambassador, Dr. Webb said finally, that was not how we expected it to go. Sarah stared out at the stars, streaming past their viewport. No, Marcus, it wasn't. The media back home will want to know how it went. Tell them it went exactly as we hoped, Sarah said, her voice carrying a strange new quality that made Webb look at her sharply. Ma'am, tell them we learned everything. We needed to know about our neighbors in the galaxy. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. During that time, Sarah sent only one message to the government. It was brief. Request immediate meeting with Defense Council and Scientific Advisory Board. Highest priority. We have work to do. When they landed on Earth, Sarah found the planet already buzzing with activity. Her message had triggered something, a mobilization unlike anything in human history. But it was quiet, hidden from public view. Research facilities expanded overnight. Military budgets shifted toward long-term projects. The brightest minds on Earth found themselves recruited for classified work. Sarah stood before the combined leadership of humanity and delivered her report. She described every moment of the summit, every insult, every dismissal. When she finished, the room was silent. Recommendations asked President Martinez. Sarah's smile was cold. We do exactly what they suggested. We go home, we stay quiet, we be patient, and then we show them what human patience really looks like. 50 years passed. To the galaxy, humanity had learned its place. The occasional human ship was seen in the outer systems, trading quietly for basic materials. They kept to themselves, caused no trouble, made no demands. The galaxy forgot about them, which was exactly what humanity wanted. But in hidden facilities across human space, Work continued. Scientists pushed the boundaries of physics. Engineers developed technologies that should have been impossible. Philosophers and strategists planned for scenarios that spanned centuries. The breakthrough came in the 37th year of humanity's self-imposed isolation. Dr. Webb, now elderly but still sharp, stood before a machine that hummed with impossible energies. "Are you certain this will work?" he asked the lead physicist. Dr. Liu nodded. "We've tested it 1,000 times. The principles are sound. Reality is more flexible than anyone imagined, and the psychological components already implemented. In the delivery system, it will target exactly what we want it to target." Webb looked at the readings one more time, then picked up the secure communication device. "Ambassador Chen, this is Dr. Webb. Project Patience is ready for final phase. Implementation." The voice that answered was older now, but carried the same cold resolve that had been forged in the humiliation of Nexus Station. "Understood, Doctor. Begin distribution immediately." Across human space, identical devices were activated. They sent out signals that would take years to reach their destinations, traveling at exactly the speed of light to avoid detection. The signals carried a simple message to every major world in the galaxy. Humanity requests an audience. The responses came back as expected. Laughter, dismissal. A few worlds didn't even bother to reply, but they all received the same follow-up message. "We have developed something you might find interesting. A simple test. If any species can complete it without losing their composure, we will share our new technological discoveries freely." That got their attention. The first delegation arrived at the edge of human space 6 months later. The Zephyrians, of course. Led by High Chancellor Vexthera herself, now even more ancient and imperial than before. She had agreed to this meeting out of simple curiosity. What could the humans possibly have developed that would interest a civilization that had mastered? The stars before Earth had cooled. The meeting was held on a simple space station in the Sol system. When Vexthara's ship docked, she was met by the same woman who had stood before the council 50 years earlier. Sarah Chen was older, her hair silver now, but her eyes burned with the same intensity. "Your Excellency," Sarah said, bowing exactly as she had 50 years before. "Welcome to human space." Vexthera looked around the station with barely concealed contempt. It was functional, efficient, but utterly lacking in the grandeur she was accustomed to. "This had better be worth my time, human," Sarah said, her smile never wavering. "I guarantee it will be memorable." Asterisk the price of pride. The testing chamber was surprisingly simple. A single chair faced a wall-mounted display screen with basic input controls built into the armrests. The room was comfortable, well lit, and completely unremarkable. High Chancellor Vexthera studied it with growing confusion. "This is your great test?" she asked, her forearms crossed in a gesture of impatience. "A simple computer terminal." Sarah. Chen nodded from her position by the door. "The concept is straightforward, Your Excellency. The challenge will begin when you're seated. All you need to do is complete the task presented on the screen. If you become frustrated or lose your composure in any way, the test ends. If you complete it calmly, humanity will share our recent technological discoveries with the galaxy. And if I fail," Sarah's smile was enigmatic, "then you fail. There's no penalty beyond that." Vexthara's laugh was the same crystalline sound that had haunted Sarah for 50 years. "How absurd. The Zephyrian Empire has existed for 10 millennia. Our philosophers have mastered meditation techniques that allow us to remain calm for centuries. Our patience is legendary. Your little test is hardly a challenge. She settled into the chair with regal dignity. The screen flickered to life, displaying what appeared to be a simple geometric puzzle. Colored shapes needed to be moved into matching positions. Child's play. Vexthera began confidently, manipulating the controls with practiced ease. The first few levels were indeed simple, barely requiring thought. She found herself wondering why the humans had bothered with such a trivial exercise. Then, the difficulty increased. The shapes became more complex, the matching requirements more intricate. Still manageable, but requiring actual concentration. Vexthera's confidence remained unshaken. She had been solving puzzles more complex than this when humanity was still discovering agriculture. By level 20, she was frowning slightly. The patterns were becoming genuinely challenging, requiring her to think several moves ahead. But she was making progress, and her composure remained perfect. Level 30 brought the first surprise. Just as she was about to complete a particularly tricky arrangement, one of her carefully positioned pieces randomly shifted to a different location. A glitch in the system, clearly. She repositioned it and continued. It happened again on level 35, and again on level 40. Each time, just as victory seemed certain, a random element would disrupt her careful work. Vexthera's jaw tightened, almost imperceptibly. "Is your equipment malfunctioning?" she asked, not turning away from the screen. "Everything is working perfectly," Sarah replied. "The random elements are part of the challenge design." Level 50. Now the random disruptions were happening more frequently, sometimes multiple times per level. What should have been a straightforward puzzle was becoming an exercise in rebuilding the same arrangements over and over again. Vexthera's breathing had changed, becoming slightly more rapid. At level 75, she encountered her first impossible situation. The random shift had created a configuration that couldn't be solved within the game's rules. She stared at the screen for several minutes, trying different approaches, before realizing she would have to start the level over completely. "This is poorly designed," she muttered, her first crack in perfect composure. "The design is intentional," Sarah said calmly. "Everything you're experiencing is by design." Level 100. Vexthera had been playing for 3 hours now. What had started as a simple exercise had become a grueling test of endurance. The random disruptions were constant now, sometimes undoing hours of work with a single, impossible-to-predict shift. Her hands were gripping the controls more tightly than necessary. "How many levels are there?" she asked, her voice strained. "That depends entirely on you, Your Excellency." By level 150, Vexthera's perfect posture had begun to deteriorate. She was leaning forward now, her shoulders tense, muttering under her breath in the ancient Zephyrian tongue. The words weren't complimentary. Level 200 brought a new horror. The controls began to occasionally not respond, or respond incorrectly. What she clearly saw as a move to the left would sometimes register as a move to the right. The game was fighting her directly now, actively working against her success. "This is intolerable," she hissed, her composure finally cracking completely. "What kind of sadistic exercise is this?" "The kind that reveals truth," Sarah said. "Would you like to continue, or shall we end the test here?" Vexthera's pride warred with her frustration. She had boasted of Zephyrian patience and composure. To quit now would be to admit defeat to a species she had dismissed as primitive insects. "I will complete your absurd test." But she wouldn't. By level 250, her movements were sharp and angry. She was cursing openly now, her forehands slamming the controls with increasing violence. The game had stripped away millennia of civilized behavior, reducing a galactic ruler to a frustrated child. At level 300, she broke completely. With a scream of pure rage, she began smashing the control panel with all four fists, her composure shattered beyond repair. Security systems activated, gently restraining her until she calmed down enough to be safely removed from the chamber. Impossible, she gasped as she was led away. No being could complete such a test. It's designed to create failure. Sarah watched. The former High Chancellor, being escorted to her ship, then activated the communication system. Next delegation, please report to Testing Chamber 2. Over the following months, they all came. The crystalline Nexari, who prided themselves on logical perfection, lasted barely 2 hours before their harmonic frequencies became shrill with frustration. The insectoid Threx, supposedly emotionless, began clicking their mandibles so rapidly. They damaged the testing equipment. The machine-integrated cybernetic collective, who claimed to have overcome biological limitations, actually caught fire when their cooling systems failed to handle the heat generated by their fury. Each failure was recorded, each breakdown was documented. Each proud civilization was reduced to the same basic emotional response: rage, frustration, and humiliation. The galaxy began to take notice. Species that had never shown interest in humanity suddenly demanded their own chance at the test. Pride and curiosity drove them to the same inevitable failure. Some lasted longer than others, but none succeeded. The theoretical maximum anyone had achieved was 4 hours and 17 minutes. Most failed within 2. Then came the revelation that changed everything. Dr. Marcus Webb, now ancient but still serving as humanity's chief xenobiologist, stood before the Galactic Council with a simple datapad in his hands. The same chamber where humanity had been humiliated 50 years earlier was packed with representatives from every major civilization. They had all come to demand answers. "The test you have all attempted," Dr. Webb began, his voice carrying clearly through the communication systems, was indeed designed to be completed. In fact, it has been completed successfully thousands of times. The chamber erupted in disbelief and anger. Impossible, they claimed. No being could maintain composure under such conditions. "You're correct," Webb continued calmly. "No being can complete it. But humans do, regularly. Our current record holder is a 7-year-old child from New Geneva who completed it in just under 6 hours while eating lunch and watching cartoons." The silence that followed was deafening. "You see," Webb explained, "the test doesn't measure patience or composure. It measures something else entirely. Something that you, in your ancient wisdom and perfect civilizations, have forgotten how to do." He activated the display screen behind him, showing statistics that painted a devastating picture. Species after species, civilization after civilization, all failing at the same point, all breaking down in the same way. The test measures the ability to continue working toward a goal despite knowing that the system is actively, deliberately unfair, despite knowing that success may never come, despite knowing that the rules will change without warning and that previous progress may be randomly destroyed. The realization began to dawn on some of the more perceptive delegates. "You call us?" Primitive Webb continued, his voice growing stronger. "You mock our brief lifespans and fragile civilizations. But we learned something in our short existence that you, in all your millennia of perfect societies, have forgotten." He leaned forward, his eyes scanning the assembled representatives of galactic power. We learned how to keep going when everything is stacked against us. We learned how to find motivation in unfairness rather than surrender to it. We learned that sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to stop playing, no matter how rigged the game becomes. The display changed to show human settlements spreading across previously uninhabitable worlds. Human ships venturing into dangerous regions other species avoided. Human researchers making breakthrough discoveries that established civilizations had deemed impossible. While you perfected your societies and achieved your stability, we remained chaotic and struggling. Every generation of humans faces new challenges, new unfairness, new systems designed to defeat them, and every generation learns the same lesson. Never give up, never accept defeat, never stop pushing forward. He paused, letting the implications sink in. Your test proved something we already knew, came a voice from the gallery. It was Sarah Chen, now Director of Human Galactic Relations, speaking for the first time in the formal session. It proved that you've become so accustomed to fairness, to systems that make sense, to rules that don't change arbitrarily, that you've lost the ability to function when those conditions aren't met. She stood, her presence commanding attention despite her small stature compared to most delegates. For 50 years, we've been developing technologies that seemed impossible. We succeeded because we're used to working with systems that don't make sense, that change without warning, that seem designed to prevent our success. We call it life. The chamber was absolutely silent now. You asked us to be patient, Sarah continued, her voice carrying the weight of half a century of preparation. You suggested we wait until we were ready to join galactic civilization. Well, we waited, we learned, and now we understand the truth. She activated a new display, showing technological achievements that made several delegates gasp in recognition of their impossibility. We don't want to join your civilization, she said simply. We've built our own. One that works when nothing else does. One that thrives on unfairness and finds strength in struggle. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not just developed new technologies, they had developed an entire approach to existence that made them functionally immune to the kinds of systematic failures that could cripple other civilizations. The test will remain available, Sarah announced, for any species that wishes to attempt it. We're genuinely curious to see if anyone can develop the necessary ... flexibility to complete it. Until then, humanity will continue to expand, to explore, and to thrive in conditions that others find intolerable. She paused, her smile holding echoes of the hurt and determination that had been forged 50 years earlier. We never forgot what you said to us. We never got over it. And now the galaxy will live with the consequences of teaching us that we couldn't rely on anyone else to be fair. As the session ended and delegates began to file out in stunned silence, many were already making plans. Some wanted to attempt the test again, convinced they could succeed where others had failed. Others were beginning to realize that the balance of galactic power had shifted in ways they were only starting to understand. Humanity had not just proven themselves capable, they had proven themselves unstoppable. And they had done it with the most human trait of all, the absolute refusal to accept defeat, no matter how inevitable it seemed. The galaxy had taught them they were alone. Now they would learn what humans could accomplish when they stopped expecting help and started expecting resistance. The age of human dominance had begun, built on a foundation of grudges held, lessons learned, and the simple, terrifying persistence that comes from never, ever getting over it.